All right. So I do have the chat window open, and we'll be trying to keep an eye on that. It's kind of like split vision and all the rest of that today. First, I want to congratulate you all for hanging in there. It's a beautiful summer day here in McGrath, and it's 2:30, and some of you might be in your seventh or eighth session today. So thanks for being awesome and joining us. And let's get started. Vanessa is transcribing using an extension for her end. That's perfectly fine. The recording will be sent out to all of you. And Vanessa, by the way, has been in every session that I've peeked into. So thanks for joining us again, Vanessa. So as I said, the recording will be shared. If there's any slides that you're like, oh, I like that one, just do a screen capture. I believe all the slides will be shared as well, but sometimes you're just like, oh, that one and that one, like I want that one. So you can do screen captures all you want moving forward. Alrighty. So we've got about 75 minutes scheduled. We are last of the day, and it's always nice if we can get you out into the afternoon. But I'm not going to rush, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have and go from there. So away we go. First, land acknowledgement. Now, I believe in the importance of personalizing land acknowledgement. So let me just share this with you. If you were with me in my joint session earlier today, we had it kind of pluralized and shared with my co-host, Cheryl. But I was born December 22nd, 1958 in Calgary on Treaty 7 territory. I did not know that at the time. The treaty was signed September 22nd, 1877 at Blackfoot Crossing between the Crown and the Siksika, Kainai, Piikani, Stoney Nakoda, and Tsuut'ina nations. I have also lived on Treaty 6 and Treaty 8, and again returned to Treaty 7 territory. I acknowledge that this land is also the historical and present-day homeland of the Métis in present-day Alberta. I recognize that the rights, relationships, and responsibilities established by these treaties predate my family's arrival and certainly my arrival. As a result, I understand that I live with inherited responsibilities to learn, act, and reconcile, to uphold the spirit of those agreements across the remainder of my life. I honor the lives, knowledge, and enduring presence of the original peoples of this land. I commit to ongoing learning to foster respectful relationships with Indigenous communities and to translating this awareness into meaningful action, small and significant, toward reconciliation. If I might, and I know you can see just a little corner of me in your screen, perhaps, I just want to hold this book up. This is 52 Ways to Reconcile. This is the most recent book by the Canadian author David Robertson, a friend of our podcast. You can listen to Dave talk about this book on one of our most recent episodes on your whatever podcast platform you choose. And we'd be more than happy to have you do that. It's quite a good book. It offers little opportunities for 52 different weeks across the year. One of them is a blank, as in create your own way. So there you go. Okay, just checking if I'm coming through loud and clear, and you can see the slideshow. It all looks good. So a couple of disclaimers before we get going. When people ask, oh, I'll put a screenshot of the podcast name in for you in a bit. When I introduce myself, I often indicate, or when people ask my age, that I was born December 22nd, it says 1958, but I usually say when dinosaurs freely roamed the land. But in spite of my advanced years, I have taken a significant interest in trying to understand what AI is all about, but I have not received my wizard's badge and don't expect to anytime soon. With AI, today is different from yesterday, and next week will bring new opportunities. And bottom line is that it's important that we try. And that's really what this is all going to be about today, is getting us to that. Can I ask you a question, each of you in the chat? On the subject of AI, how would you rate yourself? I know almost nothing. I haven't done very much at all. I've tried a number of platforms. I use everything. I try everything. Vanessa, how can you be a 2 and a 5? I'm going to need some clarity on that. Okay. 2 is just an upside down 5. Is that what you're saying? Or vice versa? All right. Thank you very much. Love the interaction there. Even though I spent a great deal of time on it, and even just in the last session did something very quick to support my colleagues and put a little piece in about mapping that I created on the fly with the question coming, I just know for a fact that wherever I am today, I kind of live by the motto: the more I know I need to know more. And I don't see that as an anxiety causing thing. It's just part of the journey. And I want to emphasize that for all of you. I would like to offer a couple of suggestions. These 2 books, one of them is quite recent. The first one here, Christopher Penn's Almost Timeless, has been a very fun read. Little snippets, and they several of which I'm referring to today. But he didn't write it for educators. He wrote it more for business and marketing. But it's been very easy for me to read and look at this and say, okay, how does this apply to what I'm doing? And then test out some of the things that he asks of us. I definitely would suggest that you pick up all 3 books here, but for different reasons. Christopher's and Ethan's books are AI centered, and Ethan Mollick, they both also have newsletters that are worth searching out and subscribing to. And really, that's the piece. If you're going to be involved in this and use this, you'll be better at using it tomorrow. You'll be better at using it probably at the end of today. And that's not because of me. That's just because of you listening, learning, and getting after it. Now, this 3rd book is a little bit different, and it's not AI specific at all. But as we go to the next slide, this book came from a speech given by the then dean at Harvard's Graduate School of Education, James Ryan. He was only dean there for like 3 years, and he went on to become the president at the University of Virginia, which he recently stepped down from in a conflict with the president of the United States, and who wanted him to comply, and he wanted to be an educational institution. So, but these 5 questions are great questions to constantly have rolling around in your head when you're thinking about AI. I particularly like I wonder. And that is simply like you've got an AI tool like ChatGPT in front of you, and you've been musing about something, and you say to yourself, I wonder. And then you start that conversation with ChatGPT, let's say, and express something, pose a question, get an answer, and get going back and forth on it. I can tell you that AI is constantly wired with how can I help? That is ChatGPT and Claude and those types of programs. Their number one focus is to try and help. But these questions are highly effective, and you can actually watch a YouTube video of Dr. Ryan's speech where he explains those. I have, and I'll share it again a couple of other times, but you see down here in the corner of the slide a link to my link tree. I have a full summary of these 5 questions, and would invite you to go ahead and access that summary and take a read. And then if you're interested, take a deeper dive into the book. Okay. Here's kind of the piece. This next piece draws out of Ethan's book. the bitter lesson comes from a story shared by Ethan Mollick, right? So initially, programmers tried to teach computers how to play chess. And the computers got pretty good at it, but they didn't get great at it until they taught computers how to learn, specifically learn from their mistakes. So here's the bitter lesson, because it means that our human understanding of problems built from a lifetime of experience is not that important in solving a problem with AI. Okay, so we learn from our mistakes. And when we learn from our mistakes, and we should be learning from our mistakes, we're being the human version of AI at its best. And so it's a piece of, like, you have to be willing to try, you have to be willing to test, and you have to be okay with, like, oh, I just put an hour into this and I got this far and I'm going to trash this and start over. Yeah, that's okay, because you learned 7 or 8 different things that are going to make it easier for you all the rest of the way through. This is something that I definitely would want you to remember. This is one of the 46 teachings of Chris Penn. AI has 3 prime directives in order of importance. So when things go wrong, it isn't necessarily because they were programmed to go wrong. And here I'm speaking of the primary platforms that people are mostly familiar with: ChatGPT, I'm going to say Claude. Those are Perplexity. There's something called U.com, which if you have, I saw a number of people who are number 1s and number 2s. They put themselves at 1 or 2. Where's a good place to start? Maybe start with U.com, because it gives you access to a number of those different platforms. And I will spend some time talking about why I strongly recommend that you work primarily with Claude as an educator. I don't know why I use the word strongly. I recommend that you work with Claude as an educator, particularly when you're working with curriculum documents and trying to create accurate documents. But the first directive is to be harmless, to not do anything at all that is going to endanger anybody in any way, shape, or form. Sometimes people take the AI and take themselves into a place that they shouldn't, but that's its first piece. And obviously, companies didn't want to be sued, so it's a big one. The next one is almost as powerful and is overwhelming in one particular way. So, and that is to be helpful. You're talking to ChatGPT, and I'm going to tell you, embrace the word you're talking to. I know you're talking to a computer, but have it as a conversation. Think of them or think of him or her as, or they, but think of them as an intern, a collaborator. I used servant in the description of this, and then I thought, well, yeah, okay, that's certainly a possibility. But their job is to help. You ask a question, they want to give you a good response. And it's important to know that that's where they're coming from, and that it is an overwhelming piece. And so if you ask a question, and sometimes it's definitely, and I'll emphasize this in a couple of slides, it's definitely us. We ask a poor question, we're going to get a poor or confused answer. Sometimes we ask a question and it's trying to find, in its massive levels of training, all the libraries, electronic libraries of the world poured into some of these. It's trying to find the answer, and it can't make sense of it, in part because of the question we asked, and it's going to answer it. And that's when you get stuff that's not accurate, not as accurate as it should be. And it wants to be perfectly accurate, and there are words you can use in your prompt that will help it be perfectly accurate, but it wants to answer your question most of all. And so there comes points in time where it will make things up. And they're not true at all, but it achieved its be helpful and answer you question, right? So that's where the be truthful part comes in. It is the third priority, and it is going to strive for that, but its desire to be helpful will cause it to make up a story. And that's called hallucinations. And so sometimes you'll get hallucinations. I've heard of a man who asked a question about how a new dog training program that you could have that would train your dog to run your nuclear facility. And the AI created a beautiful program that would and company of dog trainers that train dogs to run nuclear facilities. And then it asked it to create a letter of reference for that dog training program, and it created a beautiful letter of reference about how great it was that their dog was trained to run their at-home nuclear facility, and everything. All of it perfect, none of it accurate, right? So that's what can happen when we work with that. Okay. So keeping those in mind helps us when we're writing to. I find it definitely helps me not to get frustrated. If something doesn't come out the way I want it to, first, second, third, particularly with images, you kind of got to look at your prompts and sometimes just start over in a whole nother chat, because it remembers the stuff in the chat that you're in. So sometimes it's just better start new chat and start again and simplify. Okay. Whoop. So the most important piece in this entire process, these next couple of slides, be good ones to take screenshots of. As I say, we'll share it out. Prompt writing is everything. How many of you thought you were coders? Like, or would, I saw a number of ones and a number of twos in your information about AI or your knowledge about AI. If someone asked me even a few weeks ago, hey, do you know coding? I would say no. Like I can't code a web page. I can't. I do know some HTML, so I wouldn't want to lie. Okay, I know HTML, but I don't think of myself as a coder. However, when we engage in writing words to an AI platform, we are coding. We are inputting, and then it is outputting. And so we think of it that way. We want to, the better code we write, the better prompt we write, the better results we can get. That is a concept I want you to hold on to. So what should we do? Well, the basic structure of effective prompts is very simple. Set a tone, give very specific instructions, context. Okay, where are you going to use this information? What is this information for? And constraints. Here's a secret word for you: verbatim. If you use the word verbatim, I want the information you give me to be verbatim in all references to the curriculum, so that it's actually pulling the exact words out of the curriculum and putting, and not mixing them up, exactly as they're written. When you're asking, where does mapping show up in the social studies curriculum? Don't be afraid to iterate, do multiple, work your way up on it, and provide real scenarios that you want it to work from. Now, there's a couple of different frameworks that work for this. One is Rappel. So role, action, prime it, give it some background, prompt, evaluate, and learn. Another one that I have been using a fair bit is crafts, which came to me from my friend Angela Stockman, who also participated in podcast episodes with us on our APLC channel. But so this is crafts, and so this is the other one. Take a screenshot of, the reason I suggest screenshot, guys, is that if you've got a photo library and you've got this in your photo library, then you have it wherever you need it. You can use it anytime, pull it up into anything, and you've got it. As opposed to, where's that slide deck that I got way back when? It's just in your photos. And you can, in many platforms now, you can search your photos, and your photos are even able to be searchable for text, right? So this is it. Did I make it clear what I want it to do? Did I tell it its role? You are a master teacher of grade 3. Okay, tell it that. You have an understanding of pedagogical practice, and you, etc. Right? What's the audience? Who are they writing for? This is very important, because you want, particularly for handouts and things of that nature, well, you want the writing to match the grade that's going to be doing the reading. And I have found in my work, as I'm digging through the curriculum and then saying, I'd like to give parents something at the beginning of the year that gives them an overview of all the things that we're going to cover. Well, what grade level should I go with for that? Definitely the advice would be, hey, keep it around grade 9, 10 grade level. And so your audience are the parents of my grade 5 or my grade 7 or whatever the students may be. And state that. If it's a handout, state it. If you have, like when I was teaching K&E, okay, I would have a handout at grade 10 K&E, knowledge and employability grade. And if I was teaching -1 at the same time, I would have loved to have had opportunity to change the writing that easily to come up to the different reading levels. And then what you want it to look like. What's the output going to look like, and any other key specifics. And try to organize it that way, and try and do it this way, just writing it in a few times and going from there. But there is another tool. So before you hit enter, just think, could this be more specific? What jargon specific to education and my class and my way of teaching? Because it's great. It'll learn your tone, your attitude, your ways of coming at it. What have I omitted? Is there anything essential in the context that's missing? I love this. Assume it knows nothing. Provide everything. Specificity is not just a technique, it is the governing principle of effective communication with generative AI. It also helps in conversations with teenagers. Assume they know not. Okay. I mentioned I had 6 kids. All right. So any questions about how you might begin the process of building out prompts? We're good. Okay. Then the magic here, not the magic. Here's the next piece. Say you can't remember that, but you've got an idea in your head. Okay, here's an example. In the top right is an idea that I had. Can you create an image with a white background and draw upon the APLC color scheme? And all the image says is ask a friend. This will be placed in the up corner. I really like that, guys, for really good English. This will be placed in the up corner of a slide in a presentation on AI and prompting. By the way, can you take a minute and provide an improved prompt of this prompt? So what you read up there right beside ask a friend, that is what I wrote in ChatGPT. And at the very end, I said, oh, could you write me a better prompt than this, please? The master prompter is ChatGPT. It can create great prompts. It's got all the training about prompts that's kind of been done. So you just need to tell your story and hit on those key pieces that are in the crafts formula, but you can tell it in your way and then say, okay, now with that, can you write a proper prompt? And the cool thing is it'll write the prompt and then it'll say, how's this? Or do you want me to create this image now? So that prompt in the top right hand corner might not have got that result, but the prompt that it created generated that response in the first try. So this is a key piece, particularly as you're working with unit plans and lesson plans and things of that nature, or resources in particular. You're like, oh man, I really could use, and what about this? And that, this is where I take you back to the 5 essential questions. Those things roll around in my head all the time. So when I'm looking at something that I want to do with my students, I think, okay, well, what if, I wonder, and then I'd write that out. And I don't know about you, but now in lazy writing, I don't necessarily deal with as much punctuation when I'm just writing for me. But so I write out the thoughts that are in my head and say, okay, can you make this into a prompt? And it does. I'm going to share a couple of examples with you and give you a chance to maybe get after it and try a little bit. But you see it right there. Never forget, your best friend in working with AI is AI, as long as you are remembering you're still holding the wheel. Okay. Now you've asked a friend. Here's the deal. This is another AI created. I created this image as well and described what I wanted and asked it to create the prompt. And this is a first draft image. So when you find yourself staring at crazy, that does not make any sense. And where did you get this from? The problem is rarely that the AI has gone rogue or is being stupid. It's almost always that you have unwittingly fed it garbage. We steered it in the wrong direction. And that's kind of the piece. It's a little like, well, bad ingredients. The garbage can be a couple of things. And this is very important. If you provide AI with some documents that you want it to refer to, and those documents are not that great, that's the data part. Okay, so I give it this file, and this file that I want it to refer to. And then I give it instructions. Now that's the recipe. Okay, so I say, I want you to do this, and then do this, and then do this, and give me this. All right, so I gave it some files. I gave it a recipe. Now go. And now I sit back and I'm waiting for a miracle. Wow, that's awesome. And it comes back and I'm like, what? No, that's not what I wanted. And so I've got to look back at, okay, what did I give it? Where did I push it to the edge? Because it's still, remember, its number one thing, it wants to help. So it's going to try as best it can with what I gave it to give me what I want. What I want. I want money. Right? So it's going to try to give that to me. But it can't, because it's constrained by the constraints I put on it, particularly if I've pointed it at specific documents and said, stay inside this lane. Stay in the lane and do this. I can't stay in the lane and do that because the stuff you gave me isn't going to get there. So very, very important for us to think, hey, what did I ask it to do? How did I ask it to do it? What am I doing? What's in there that's leading it down the garden path instead of where I wanted it to go? Comfortable with that, guys? I imagine you are. Whoop. So this is kind of the piece. You can actually, with some of the platforms, open the microphone and go back and forth with AI about your questions. You can set it up so we're having a Socratic dialogue. Now, I want to tell you, when I was trying to create this image, I wanted to be a third person. So we're having a conversation. So I actually put a picture of me and said, put Socrates, myself, and the computer in a semicircle having a conversation. And I want the computer to ask for clarifying information. So the AI to ask for more information. So it did a great job of having the bubble over Socrates. It even did a pretty good job of putting us in a semicircle. I was to the right of the computer, but it could not get that computer speech bubble to be over the computer if I was in the picture. It wanted it to be over me. And I was really specific. Finally, I just said, okay, clearly the old man does not need to be in the picture. And by old man, I meant the other old man from Socrates. Okay, so you engage in a conversation. Now it can be actually with the microphone, or it can be back and forth. I'm thinking about this, and this is what I'm hoping that it can achieve. Now, what do you think? What am I missing? Can you prompt me back with some questions till we get some clarity? And so it'll ask a question, you type in your answer. It'll come back with another question. You type in another answer. It'll come back with another question. Now, you do not have to repeat all those. You can then at the end go, okay, in light of this entire conversation, can you generate a prompt for me? And it would go back over where we've gone through the questions and the answers that we've had, where we've gone through, and create a prompt, and then away you go. So you just embrace that piece to it, and you're off to the races. It's fun. Don't be afraid. Give it a try. Now, this I want to spend a bit of time on. There's know your audience. You're not in front of me, right? So I don't know how many of you are my age and enjoyed Robin Williams as a stand-up comedian. But there was a time in one of Robin's shows where he was talking about being at a party, and in one of the routines, he referred to a question that he posed to a guy that was heavily involved in using cocaine at the party. And he said, why are you using that? And the guy said, well, it intensifies my personality. And Robin replied, and I'll clean this up for everybody a little bit. Well, yeah, but what if you're a butthead? AI is a force multiplier. And one of the things that's very interesting to read in Chris Penn's book is that there is a difference if you, in your language, back and forth with AI, are your tone matters. If you're angry and you're wanting to attack the world with your anger and kind of be a regular American politician, no, whatever, if you've got that kind of tone, the output will reflect that kind of tone. If you've got the kind of tone that's like, hey, I'm in this together with you, let's see if we can be awesome together and get some good stuff going here, it's going to multiply that tone. If we're all worried a little bit about, well, what the kids might be using this to, and then fill in the blank. I'm old enough that I actually marked diploma exams for English the first year that they used word processors. I don't know if anybody else in the room today is that old. But the fascinating piece was they turned the thesaurus off and the spell check off the first year. And in the pilot of it. And it's kind of like, well, what are you doing? Like, we use these things all the time, and then and so they had a paper dictionary and a paper thesaurus at their computer. And that weird. If you teach good ethics, if you teach good principles, if you help them understand I heard a man say, look, having AI write a talk for church isn't going to do anything to improve your spirituality. Well, that's an example in that environment. It doesn't, it's the exact same. Having AI, and this, and I didn't say help, I said write your talk. Having AI help you write, that can, because you're still doing the thinking. You're still doing the proofreading. You're still responsible for the finished product. And you're engaged in the research. That's where the beauty comes. So it's your culture, your skills, your processes, your ethics, all of those things are amplified by AI. So Chris Penn referred to this example that I'm going to try and share with you here. I did set it up. You might need to turn up your volume. Let's see if it come now. Let us reason together. There we go. So this is loading. I'm going to play this little video, and I just want you to keep thinking about what I was saying in terms of what you bring to the table. This is from the very first Captain America. The professor is going to explain a little bit. Nope, come on now, load you. That doesn't want to load. Okay, I'll summarize the story for you. You'll remember that the doctor, in choosing this skinny runt to be Captain America, was drawn to how good of a person he was, and he contrasted what Captain America with a person that he knew in Germany who was a not good person and had used the serum that was going to make him Captain America. But the serum doesn't just make you stronger, just like using AI doesn't make you fast. It's going to be impacted by all the personality characteristics that we bring to the table, all of the ethics in our organization, all the processes, skills, culture, all of those pieces are going to be multiplied. So if you're naturally good minded, you're going to be okay. If you're naturally, let's say, pick any virtue that's a negative virtue. If you're naturally deceptive, well, you'll deceive, and your ability to deceive will intensify. If you're naturally crude, well, then be careful, because you'll become more crude and go that way. Not to be too harsh, but it's important to consider that, and the research seems to support that. If we come at AI from, and all of our AI use, from a desire to increase our knowledge and understanding and better able to serve the students in the community and everything that we interact with, chances are we're going to use it very well. And it's going to be very useful to us. If we don't, well, we'll have some knowledge, but we won't really have wisdom, right? It's interesting to me that in 1791, which is a few years ago, it's been a minute since this author published a new book, but his book begins with these two couplets. When untrue becomes true, true becomes untrue. Huh. Do we have a problem with that right now? Not in AI, just in the world. False and allegations of false news, et cetera, et cetera. But when the unreal becomes real, real becomes unreal. Or pardon me, and when the unreal becomes real, real becomes unreal. So, what is real, what isn't? These are things we always need to think about. But we can succeed, very definitely succeed with what we're doing as we work through these. Now, giving you these thoughts, and thank you for hanging through with me. I want to share a couple of examples with you. And there's never going to be a limit to the number of, oh, just a sec. Vanessa's got a question for me about the potential to intensify our ability. That is why we do need regulations about the use of AI, right? I'm not sure that when you speak of regulations, do you speak of them as regulations for you? Like start with ourselves on this. What regulations do I need for my use of AI? And then who is it I want to regulate and why? Forced learning took no hold on the mind. That's a very old phrase because that was Plato. So I might have heard it from Socrates. So what are we looking for in regulation? It's a question I have not been able to answer. Back when ChatGPT first was released a couple of years ago, we had an English teacher on our podcast, and the question was posed to him, are you worried about plagiarism? And he said, well, if I can't tell whether my students wrote this themselves, I don't know my students well enough. It was an interesting approach, and he's taken that kind of here's the high ground, kids, and here's this, and here's how you can use it, and here's how you shouldn't use it. Kind of what I referred to before. It's impossible for me to say that there's not going to be some bad outcomes of this way down the road, because I hate when fiction becomes fact, Terminator. But I'm not sure what rules I would put on it as a principal and a teacher yet. I haven't got to that. So where can you start, and on all the rest of that? If you go to, I'm going to come off the slide deck for a second and switch here. Okay. And type in Linktree. Okay. So this is a different set of links, but there are many different things here that you're welcome to check out. I have a collection of prompts that I've worked through over time with curriculum and other things. If you click on this, it'll take you to some of those prompts. I've most recently started working on 7, 8, and 9, and this is an example of describing and working back and forth. I'm going to make this a little bigger. So I engaged in an extended conversation about what I wanted to accomplish in comparing the 2006, 7, 8, and 9 social studies curriculums to the 2025 pilot curriculums that have just recently been released. And so after my conversation, it said, hey, come at it through these several phases. And so each prompt, you do these 2 prompts, save that work, start a new chat, do the prompts for content, scope, and analysis. Well, there are 3 of those. Do those 3, save that as a separate document, then come on to pedagogical and assessment analysis, do those 2 prompts, save them, then go on to phase 4. So you work your way through all of this. With those, you have a very detailed comparison of the strengths and weaknesses, the differences of the curriculum. But it started with the exact process that I just walked you through. Okay. Oh, Colin, your question about accounts. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You have more ability when you have a subscribed account. I've grown comfortable with the notion that an account in Claude and an account in ChatGPT is wise. A free account in u.com, then you can have accounts in as many others, but I would just do free accounts in any of the others myself. Okay, and hopefully that helps. So I've had a few younger teachers say, well, but Rick, that's like $50 a month for AI. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. Start with the free stuff if you want to, but it's saving me way more than it's costing me. And I'm on a pension now. So I'm kind of like back to where the younger teachers were. But I don't just use it for work. I think that's an important piece. I use it for all parts of my life. And there is value in having those two paid accounts. You have more ability, you have more storage, you have more ability to engage in longer conversations, and it resets quicker. But those are the only two that I pay for now. Okay, so you see that example there. You can, I want to share a different example. I'm a huge fan of the book Valley of the Bird Tale. This one right here. Okay, I think all educators should read this. I spoke about it in earlier, but certainly social studies teachers should read this book. It's amazing. I have 4 Native Studies courses at the University of Alberta. That's what they called them when I was in them. I think they call them Indigenous Studies now, probably. I learned more in reading this book than that. Inside this book, it tells the story of a young man, a 12-year-old student at a residential school who ran away from the residential school and ran home. It's called, I refer to it as Jim's Run. So I described it, engaged in some conversation, and asked for some pre-reading work and some different grade level activities that we could do with this reading. And then we have the actual excerpt all on this document. This is available to you on my link tree. And so in the end, the idea would be to read at the appropriate grade level this story of Jim running for 3 days to get home. And then I asked myself, okay, how can AI help me with trying to create something that would help students wherever they live to see what it would be like to run distance-wise, where they would get. And so I went back and forth in a conversation and created, this is entirely AI. I described what I wanted. We went through a number of iterations. AI created the HTML and the necessary plugins to something called Leaflet that allowed me, let's see, I'm going to go back to where I will get to your question, Alice, about why Claude over the others. That we're good for time because we're pretty much done the slides. Now we're getting into good stuff. Let's see, where's somebody from? Vermilion. Okay, let's try that. So this works no matter where you are. Vermilion, and the link for this is in the document, and the document is shared with you. And so is Vermilion passed? That is not the same. Did I spell Vermilion wrong? 1 L. Way to go, Rick. You social studies teacher, you. Find and draw. There we go. So we're in the town of Vermilion. If the residential school was in the town of Vermilion, and you see some circles here, we're going to zoom in a little bit. Okay, so that first circle is 130 kilometers from the town of Vermilion. And I'm going to remove the hamlets. So it'll repopulate here in a second with just the villages and towns. And you can see the villages all along the roads there and things of that nature. But in the story, Jim runs just about 150 kilometers to get home. And that's this orange circle out here. And I kind of like, okay, as students, what are these places out close to that orange circle? And we can zoom in, move the map, and we can see, okay, if I had to run from Vermilion to Bruderheim to get home, and in the story, one of the most powerful parts of that story is right at the very end. He gets home. After 3 days of flight entirely on foot, Jim finally made it back to Weway-Sakapo. He'd covered more than the distance of a marathon each day. I was a tough little bugger, he says. When Jim arrived home, exhausted, triumphant, his mother gave him a big hug. Then she told him to brush his teeth because they were blackened by all the berries that he had eaten on the way. It wasn't long until his father, Hugh, said, you're going to have to go back, right? Since truancy remained a federal offense for which Hugh's parents could be sent to jail. The family had no meaningful choice. When Weway-Sakapo's Indian agent found out that Jim was with his parents, he promptly drove him back to Brandon. Jim's 3-day escape was undone by 3 hours in the back of a flatbed truck. So AI can help us develop resources. That's why I'm sharing this with you. I don't know how to code that level of HTML, and it took me an hour to wrestle back and forth with it and look for ways to get it done, but it definitely helped me do that. And I have that resource now that I can use at any time, any place, and there it is. So that's kind of the piece there. Should we open the QR code? I got lost. You're looking at oh, sorry, Vanessa. I'll hopefully unlose you shortly. Just another example. Okay, let's go to the difference between ChatGPT and the other. So, let's pull up ChatGPT and bring it over to the screen for you. So here's what ChatGPT what Claude looks like. Claude is different from ChatGPT in that it does not share the things that you put in out with the training. So your materials, the conversations that you have, they stay in ChatGPT, or pardon me, Claude. I've been saying ChatGPT too much. They stay in Claude. The next piece is projects. And this is very important. I have a number of projects. You can see some of them listed over here. Okay. In the project, so in the projects, you start by populating the projects with documents. These documents include, in my case, each grade's English language arts curriculum and each grade's final copy of the social studies curriculum. And all I did for that was go to Alberta Learning, print, and choose the individual grade with all of the elements involved. So organizing idea, guiding question, learning outcomes, and cusps. So I have the grade 5 document, the grade 4, all of the grades, social studies and English in there. I also have some resource lists, and I have a number of the thinking routines from Project Zero at Harvard, which is this collection. I extracted a number of the PDFs. So I used to think, but now I think, for example. So it has, in that project, it has exactly what those thinking routines are and how those, get out of there, advertisement, and how we do those thinking routines and why we do them. It's got all of those kinds of pieces inside the project knowledge. So with that in place, I can then ask questions. And as I said, most recently, that entire conversation around the differences between the junior high, and you saw that example, it was constrained to just use that material. The other piece to using Claude, you can set Claude up so that it becomes a place where that students could use to upload a draft of their writing and get feedback basically from you, because you in the project trained Claude that this is what you're looking for and this is how you provide feedback. The student material comes in, doesn't have to have the name on it, but you're still safe because these documents are not used to train outside of the project. So student documents can come in, they can be proofed, they can have feedback brought to them that's from what you trained Claude in that project to do, and they get feedback on their writing like almost immediately. And when you think back again, there were semesters where I had English 30, Social 30. I had an English 30-2 class that had 36 kids in it. And I didn't have access to any of this. So every essay, the writing, the reading, the feedback loop, I was painful. So you're still in the end, you're going to mark the finished product. You're still the one giving the guidance because you trained it on what you're looking for and what kind of guidance you want to give it. But it's just so very easy to constrain the conversation to stay inside the projects. So that's the piece there, the limitations. Claude is the best. ChatGPT says Claude's the best, by the way, at working with large documents, document analysis, that sort of stuff. When you're wanting to create, you need to go outside of it. And that's why I maintain that ChatGPT conversation capability as well, because you can't create images in Claude. That's not what it's for. You're better off to go to ChatGPT or Canva to do that. Does that help on your answer on that? As an answer on that, I hope it does. So I've shared a lot of these pieces inside the link tree when you scroll down, and we'll continue to. I've kind of archived all of the work that I did with the pilot curriculum and started to rebuild things. So these folders, where now I'm rebuilding things that I'm working on here. And some of these will definitely end up on our APLC website, but this is where I'm working with them and testing them and going like that. I will share the link tree in the chat. If that didn't, let me just do that real quick. Chat. Oh, where did the chat go? There it is. Here's the link tree. Okay, so there's the link tree in the chat. You know what, folks, the other day, or on the other side of this, in ChatGPT, I did get into a conversation, and this is, I'll just share this with you as we still have a little bit of time. I started this by saying, have an idea in your head, right? So when I was a social studies teacher, grade 11, when we taught World War II, or World War I, pardon me, World War I, and we had read about, and we had watched some things, and we had some conversations around the Battle of Passchendaele. And I took all my students that year, and we went out of Grand Prairie and up the big hill towards Beaver Lodge. And we stopped at the very top of the hill. And at the very top of the hill, you turn and you look back towards Grand Prairie, you can see a long ways. And I had some binoculars, and I had put some markers that we could see with the binoculars that gave some idea to the size of the battle that took place at Passchendaele, and had a conversation around that. It was kind of review. And then we ate fruit from all over the world, which was a review of globalization, and that kind of finished our field trip. But I started to think about it the other day and said, I wonder. So here's an example of a muse. The World War I Battle of Passchendaele, I think I spelled that wrong, and I just actually put that right in there. Feel free to correct it. What divisions, countries were involved? How much actual land? How's the battleground compared to quarter sections of farmland? What was the total length of the battle? The number of casualties, fatalities, and everything else with that? Can you rewrite this as a prompt? And this is what I say most of the time. I put in my muse, I'm thinking about context, I'm thinking about all those things that I talked about in crafts. And then I ask it, can you do a prompt for me on that? And it does. And then I look at the prompt and go, okay, am I good with that? Did that capture everything? And notice how it already corrected my spelling. So thanks for that. And then I said, okay, go. So it went, and it starts telling me things about nations that were involved and the size of the battle. And when I saw the size of the battle, I was like, huh, that's interesting. I knew it was small, but here was the reminder to me. And that led to another thought. And I'm going to make these a little bigger for you. So it's a little bigger on the screen. Okay. And so scrolling through this, I'm looking at it, and I was like, huh, I wasn't so worried about this here. It was more the size and the numbers. And so then I went, okay. And then I asked it to convert it to a teacher-friendly narrative version, which it did. It got a couple of things wrong. I told it to correct it. This is kind of scary when you say to help with the picture. Think of a gym pack with 500 students. It would take 300 gyms of students to cover the number of lives that were lost in this battle on this small little area. So then I said, okay, let's localize this, because I'm going to use this in Alberta. Can you relate this to down where I live? Because the space between McGrath and Raymond is 20 kilometers or so. And so it did. It provided a story about this battlefield that's kind of the distance from McGrath to Raymond, and gave some factual pieces of all of that and what that would look like. And then an activity for me. Now, all of this starts with a muse, right? And this is the beauty of it. In all of that. Okay. And so I scrolled down and kind of, okay, this makes sense, and this makes sense. And then I said, well, let's push pause on this. And lately I've been reading a fair bit, as I'm sure you all have, about Gaza and Israel and everything that's going on there. And I listened to a couple of podcasts recently. So I don't know that there's many Albertans that understand the size and of Gaza, and this other exercise about Passchendaele triggered this. So I said, hey, do a comparison this way. And I'll share the link to the final document of all this, but it did. And it's incredible. Like from McGrath, you only have to go to Pitcher Butte, which is not very far. That's Gaza. And then you look at the populations and the damage and so on. So you get the idea how you can do a muse. You've got your outcomes, you've got your curriculum, and you can go. This type of research that requires you to go external is best done here in ChatGPT over Claude, and then you take the documents from here, bring them into Claude and ask, okay, now work with the curriculum again and tighten this up for me. So that's why I think it's important to have both. Okay. Somebody asked, where do we find Valley of the Birdtail on here? I thought I did a little link on stories. Book summaries to share. Is that it? Oh, no, that's where you can find the full summary for James Ryan's book. I'll add the Valley of the Birdtail piece onto this as well. So if you just remember the link tree, you'll be fine. Maybe I'll even download that right now for you. File, download as a PDF, and I'll upload that into the chat. Hey, we have about 5 minutes left to be, if we're going to finish early. Is there anything else I can do for you other than I've got to put this up next? Can you do something for me while I upload this residential school story for you? Can you click on the link? Oh, you can't click on the link, but I'll put the link in the survey, or pardon me, in the chat as well. Ha ha ha. Am I not merciful? So the link to the survey. Please take a minute to fill out the survey. I've shared my personal link tree with you and my personal contact stuff, because if you've got questions or you're trying something and it's turning out cool or it's a hot mess, I'm more than happy to be in touch and see if we can make some sense or beauty out of it. Or, hey, that's amazing. How'd you do that? And take that to the next step. Okay. Now, next, the request to get that Valley of Birdtail PDF. And thanks for being awesome, everybody, and hanging in there on an afternoon. Residential story. There you go. By the way, hey, you wanted the podcast. APLC. Change maker conversations. Okay. That's the show. I'm going to put the link to the show in the chat as well. See, Susan, I think I was ahead of you on that one. I might even have gone to that before you asked that. So there's the show. Now, ladies and gentlemen, there's David Robertson's episode. This is a great episode with Jason Big Charles and Kim Barker-Cade on the Indigenous culture-based learning. Really a ton of fun. Another with David. Hey, stop trying to help me right now, Siri. Way down at the very first episode, if we go here, our first episode. Hey, there's the CEO of dear friend Joanne Pittman of Calgary Public. You guys in Calgary Public, richly blessed. And there we go. Reading Across the Curriculum Book Talk Series, Valley of the Birdtail. This is our visit with Andrew Stovall Snyderman and Douglas Sanderson just after they wrote it. But I will tell you, David Robertson, award-winning Canadian author, Indigenous author, he highly recommends this book as well. Okay, 3:39. Wow, we could go all the way to 3:45. Or I'm going to turn off the recording. If anybody wants to open up their mic and ask any questions. Oh, the slide deck will come to you in the email with the recording, okay? But if you stay on for a little bit, come on, stop recording. Stop sharing.